We're gonna build ourselves a Barstool riding thingy. What you see here in this pile is the remains of an old Murray lawnmower, which will make up the drivetrain, and a bunch of other random crap that was laying around. Let the fun begin.
Not sure that I needed to save the motor mount plate from the original lawnmower slash go-kart project, but we're going to cut it out and save it anyways. So off camera, I've cleaned up the main drive axle, took out the, the hacked up lengthening of the axle to make it work for the go-kart piece, brought it back down to the original width that it was when it was in a garden tractor. Also did the same thing, cleaned up the front axle off the go-kart, shortened it up to match the width of the rear wheels. So now we're gonna start building the frame. We're gonna be using, I got some old scraps from a treadmill, and we'll be cutting that up and building the frame out of that. Here we go.
Ignore the welds. It's not my day job. Let's cap these off, make it look a little prettier. So we think we got the height and gap about right. Right about there, we're right about in the middle of the lower sprocket. So that lines up well. I do have some leeway because the sprocket on the axle and the clutch on the motor can move quite a bit, so we can make up any gap there. So we'll use that for a start. That's the height we're looking for. Now we got a baseline. Now I got to figure out where to put the actual mount itself. This is where I want I ended up picking the motor mount placement to be, just purely based on where I wanted the actual bar stool to be sitting when it's done. Some of the things that kind of play into this is we need to have steering. We've got somewhere in this area here for steering arms, and our steering shaft and steering wheel will probably end up, right in here someplace. Maybe we'll have to tweak it a little bit, but we'll see. That's what we're gonna go with now. Let's start fabbing up some framework to hold that motor plate right about in that area there and weld it up. So there's the motor mount plate I ended up with. Just box steel laying around, scraps, once again, just scraps laying around. Kind of got the height set right using these little 1/8 inch rods. Measures out pretty well to the sprocket, so we're good there. Like I mentioned before, I got plenty of give, little wiggle room to work with there, so no big deal. Next, we'll just have to figure out how to fasten this to the actual chassis in kind of an interesting and coolish way, I guess. Maybe some steel plate, or I don't know. We'll figure it out. Motor mount chassis plates have been made and tacked into place. Set the motor plate back on there to check to make sure it's sort of square, sort of pointing in the right direction. Most importantly, the sprocket on the clutch and the sprocket on the transaxle do line up. So let's go ahead and we'll tack the rest of this in, and we'll set the motor in and see how it looks. All right, we got the motor up on top of the mount's tacked in. Not sure worked just fine. First challenge we've run into, which I guess isn't horribly uncommon when you're not planning anything out, is underneath here, that shifter lever is awfully close to the clutch. Should be able to move the clutch up about a 1/4 inch and the rear sprocket up about a 1/4 inch without any issues. Then it should be plenty high enough to clear that shifter. We can do some creative bending with that lever, that mechanism, whatever that ends up being. We'll be fine. Well, now we need to mount the bar stool to the actual chassis. I was hoping to be able to take 3 or 4 inches out of the leg so it wasn't so goofy and tall, but yeah, I can maybe take 1 inch, maybe 2 out of the legs and still be clear of the engine. But let's guess cut, and it's the pleasantries of metal is if you cut too much off, just weld some of it back on. Let's try it. So there's the theory. I cut 1.5 inches off the bottom of the bar stool legs, which is as far as I can go, and then just simply pounded in a nut with a flange on it. End up with something like that. And we'll TIG weld those on, and we'll have a good mounting point to secure this to the chassis. All right, a little tight, but you know, we'll center a little bit better, align a little bit better. It'll give me enough movement with the motor to tension the chain as needed. So we should be good there. Let's mark some stuff and drill some holes and get the seat mounted. All right, let's figure out where we're gonna put the steering wheel, steering column, foot pegs, I guess. I don't know. Let's climb up here. Whew. That's a ways up. That's creepy. We'll take it. And I'm figuring right about there for the steering wheel. Puts us at let's say top of the steering wheel at 4 feet from the ground for our measurement. Because it's a place to start. Let's cut and weld. So here's what we got for steering. Steering wheel and this bearing carrier assembly. It was off of an old coin-op arcade machine of some sort. Should suffice for what we're doing, and most importantly, it was free. It's just scraps from an old machine that had failed. So we'll make use of it, and it'll become our steering. So we want the steering wheel 4 feet up off the ground. So we need to subtract, put this toolbox, the reference is about where I want the bottom of the shaft to end up. That'll leave room for a collar and still line up with the actual spindles. So we're looking at about 6 inches out of 40, a 42 inch long piece of shaft. Let's cut. That's what I'm thinking. Weld that together and start building mounts to hold everything on the cart. That's what I'm kind of thinking. We got a pillow block down here, which I'll, bolt to the front axle assembly, and then we'll have to run some sort of support from these points here. I'm thinking down to the main chassis there to stabilize it. This is going to be locked in with, some set screws on the actual pillow block, so that stabilize that. But I think that's gonna work. We'll fab up some more parts and drill some holes and bolt it together. All right, before I weld everything up, thought I'd have a seat and see how it feels, and it's actually not too bad. Maybe get it out a little bit further. About there. But yeah, that'll work. The height's about right. Leg room. Now I can move forward and make some brackets. All right, steering column's in. Basically took that assembly that I created earlier and welded a couple of braces to the frame with a couple of studs out the top there to hold the collar here in place. And then this pillow block here has set screws in the bottom of it to secure it to the actual shaft here, which gives us some pretty reasonable rigidity. Nothing too sloppy, so we'll take that. Next, we're gonna have to put some sort of an arm down here, build some sort of arm to attach our tie rod ends to our spindles, actual steering. But it's it's all right, fairly comfortable. Everything's pretty well lined up. It should work. Okay, time to build this steering arm. I've got a string connecting the two spindles together to get an idea of the length of said steering arm, which will then attach to the steering column. We're not going to worry about Ackerman or caster or camber, as it's just a Barstool cart. We're not racing the thing, so I'll take some measurements and then we'll cut this and weld this assembly together and fasten it to the steering column. All right, time to make ourselves a little simple hoop here. Thinking something like this, just out and around here, out of a piece of tube, so I could cut a piece of plate out of that and make that our foot stand. We'll be using this simple, I think it's a Harbor Freight pipe bender I bought 15-20 years ago to make this. But first we have to notch out the end here so we can have a nice fit there to weld to. So let's head to the drill press. Okay, got the pipe bent. Did actually have to notch the tube by hand because it wouldn't fit in my cheap tubing notcher, but they're tacked in. Just gotta build a couple braces. We'll get a couple braces in here someplace. Obviously I'm leaving this whole thing retained to the actual seat itself, so it could be removed from the cart. Obviously this will have to slide it up and over the top of the steering column to be the other way to remove it, but anyways, it allows me to tear it down if I need to get the motor out and so forth. So let's make a couple braces and then we can cut that piece of sheet metal or that piece of diamond plate
for our feet, and then that'll conclude that part of the project. We'll be right back. Okay, foot brace is in. Got some rigidity to it. Just kind of tacked up now. And for those that want to critique my welding, shut up. I don't consider myself a crappy welder as much as a supporter of the individuals that manufacture grinding discs and paint. Thank you for your service. Okay, let's cut out that piece of diamond plate, aluminum, and get that fastened in there, and we'll get that done. Cardboard template created, and it has been, we'll see, transferred over to the piece of diamond plate, aluminum diamond plate. So we'll get that cut out and get it attached. All right, that takes care of that. We got a place to put our feet now. Try to climb up on this thing. There we go. Yep, that'll work. Probably should have made it a little bit bigger, but it's okay. Just got a place to rest your feet. So it steers, and I got a place to put my feet. We got a motor and tires. So this will conclude part one of a two-part build. Next, we're gonna have to build controls, which will include throttle, brake, and some sort of a shifter. It is a 6-speed, 5-speed gearbox with a reverse. We want to take advantage of that.
We'll have to find a place to mount the gas tank and also the battery to start the engine. So that's where we're at. Thanks for watching. See you soon.